Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 2001 Lexus LS430 UL. Up front is a 4.3 liter V8, and down below is a 5-speed automatic transmission. Now I'm super excited to be driving this here LS430 for two main reasons. First of all, you as well as I love LS430s and the LS400s for that matter. I've driven a handful of them, a 94 LS400, a 2004 LS430, as well as even a Japanese domestic market Celsior, which is pretty much the same as the LS400 that we got here in the States, but brought over from Japan. So this will be the fourth Lexus LS on the channel, and I'm so excited to be back behind the wheel of one. But the second reason, and the more important reason why I'm excited to drive this car, is because it is the UL, which stands for ultra luxury. This car has all of the bells and whistles, and I'm excited to go through them with you today. So let's get back to that 4.3 liter V8. It is the 3UZ FE engine, and they are very stout, very reliable, and they make a decent amount of power, which I'm putting up on the screen. High 200s. They make a good amount of power, a solid amount of power, and they're very, very smooth. While yes, it's a V8, you have to get muscle car V8 out of your head. This isn't a V8 for drag strip times and backcountry cruises. This is a V8 that's sophisticated, it's quiet, it's well-mannered. It's a different kind of V8. Fuel economy I'll put up on the screen. However, the owner, Paul, gets an average of 18.3 miles to the gallon around town. Now, one thing Paul did make very clear to me is the fact that the gauge for the MPG average inside the car is dead accurate. Paul has always had spreadsheets for all of his vehicles calculating everything from average MPG to cost per mile and things like that. And he said that every car he's ever owned, all of his modern cars, they're always usually off by 1 or 2 MPGs on average. But he said that's not the case here with the LS430, that the gauge inside the car is dead accurate, which is really, really nice to see. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Like I said, paired to it is a 5-speed automatic transmission. Now, this is the first year of the LS430. Previous to 2001, it was just the LS400 because it had a 4.0 liter V8. And so they switched the body styles for 2001, creating this car. And so it still gets the 5-speed automatic from the outgoing model, which, from what I've heard, is the better transmission, the more reliable transmission. However, when you're dealing with Toyotas and Lexuses, it's a whole different category of reliability. The 6-speed automatic isn't unreliable, it's just not as reliable as the 5-speed. In the later years, they did switch to the 6-speed, so if you get like a 2004 LS430, that's gonna have a 6-speed automatic instead of the 5. Last but not least, of course, the LS430 is rear-wheel drive. So let's talk about the interior. We have a lot to go through in here, so buckle up, it's gonna be a long one. Well, in front of me, I have 4 main gauges. On the left is my coolant temperature, then I have my tachometer, and then I have the speedometer and fuel on the right. I love how they look somewhat digital. You can't really see the plastic backing. Even driving today, you know, at 10:43 a.m., they look futuristic, they look modern enough to still stay current 20 years later. Down at the bottom, that's where I'll find my average MPG gauge I mentioned earlier. And I can change that little gauge. It'll give me my tank average MPG, which is really cool. How many miles since my last refill, elapsed time, and a bunch of other nice little features. On the right, I get my odometer and of course my trip odometer. On the steering wheel, I have my mode buttons, volume, and settings on the left, and then my display features on the right. That's for those little MPG gauges in the dash. And then I get my cruise control stalk. And the reason I point this out is because in 2001, this car was outfitted with radar adaptive cruise control. Now, this current vehicle, the radar sensor is broken, and that's a $2,200 fix. So the owner hasn't done that quite yet, and I don't know if you really need to, but a car in 2001 with radar cruise is definitely impressive. Now, one downside of the steering wheel is the fact that, yes, it does have real wood at the top and bottom. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but it is starting to crack, or at least the clear coat or whatever protective surface is put on the steering wheel is cracked. Now, this is one of the very few parts of the LS430 that has actually seen some wear and tear in 105,000 miles, so it doesn't bother me that much. To the left of me, I have my power mirror adjusters. I get a little pull-out ashtray coin holder type thing, the parking brake, fuel door, trunk release, and a little lock for the trunk. I loved this feature on the LS400, and it's carried over to the 430. So a couple of thank yous to the people who made this video possible. First of all, we have Cash for Cars. Cash for Cars wants to buy your car. Whether it's running, non-running, has a good title, salvage title, whatever it is, you can get a free quote from Cash for Cars, and they will pick up your vehicle in less than 24 hours. Our next sponsor is Fixed. Fixed is a Bluetooth OBD2 sensor that plugs directly into your car and pairs to your smartphone. The app allows you to monitor your vehicle's health. It gives you a forecast of issues that might come up and helps you schedule maintenance and find new parts. Our final sponsor is ConPlates. ConPlates is a suction cup license plate mount for the front of your vehicle if you don't want to drill one into your bumper. All three of our fantastic sponsors can be found in the description below, as well as videos explaining them further if you'd like more information, but let's get on with the review. On the door, we have 3 different memory seat options. Our power seatbelt height adjuster. So if you look over my shoulder here, you can see that I can actually raise and lower the seatbelt adjustment at my leisure, which is very, very nice. It'll make you the most comfortable possible. And then getting back to the door, we have our, of course, child locks and power windows. They're all automatic. And down below, I actually have this nice fold-out folder for storage, which is really nice. And the nice wood trim is carried onto the door. Now, the really cool thing is the fact that Lexus used the same tree in order to do this entire car. Each car used the same wood from the same tree throughout the interiors, so they all matched and they all look good. You might find an LS430 with slightly lighter wood that was pulled from a different tree, but you won't find different areas of the car different shades, which I think is really, really important. Now moving into the center, this is an aftermarket radio. I'll put the brand up on the screen. I believe it's Rhino something. And this is really, really nice. However, this is not the factory radio, but if you are looking for a replacement for your 20-year-old car, I'd highly recommend this one. It does a lot of cool things. It allows for a backup camera, but the interesting thing is that it will still run your climate controls, because the climate controls in the stock LS430 are run through its little screen. It still retains that ability, which is really, really nice. Down below that, we do have climate control vents. And an interesting thing about them is that they actually oscillate, which is very rare to find in American domestic vehicles of this era, or even still today. It's a very rare feature. And so back in 2001, the LS430 got it. Then I have a tape deck and some very basic radio controls. I do have Mark Evanson speakers inside the car, which are a very nice upgrade over regular speakers, and I've always liked the sound of them. Then I have a little pop-out 6-disc changer, and down below that I have a nice little cubby area. I don't believe this is an ashtray, but still somewhere nice to put some belongings. Now, to the left of that, I have 3 very interesting buttons. On the left is my sport and normal suspension buttons. So when I put the car into sport suspension mode, it will actually stiffen up the suspension. You'll feel the road more. You can actually take a corner with more speed because the car will remain flatter. And that's very, very nice. When I leave it in normal, it's just the nice, comfy, pillowy ride that you've come to know and love from Lexus. Then we have our height adjustment. So with the adjustable suspension, it's actually on air ride suspension, meaning it can adjust itself. So I'll show a time lapse because it actually takes a while, the different heights you can set the car at, but you can manually do that. And once the vehicle hits 60 miles an hour, it'll actually lower itself down for a lower drag coefficient and give you a little bit better MPGs and a little bit better stability while driving on the highway. Very, very smart thinking from Lexus, and very, very cool to see. And last, I do have power, normal, and snow mode for the 430. Power is basically going to be your sport mode. Snow is going to be your up traction control. It's not going to let you hammer the throttle and spin out of control. Now, you can still spin this thing out of control in snow mode, but maybe a little bit less so. Then down at the bottom, we have even more interesting buttons. We have our rear sunshade. There it is. Good morning. Go back to sleep. There we go. I love that in cars. Then we have our traction control on and off. our rear headrest, which I can lower in order to give me better visibility out of the rear seat. And we have headlight washers. So up around the front of the car, I do have headlight washers, which is hilarious. Definitely an older feature on cars, but I'm pretty happy it's here nevertheless. Then we have our heated and ventilated seat options. Very, very nice here. I can do ventilated seats if I'd like. Again, a very nice feature for 2001. Then we come to the shifter itself. This is a pretty standard Toyota shifter. Nothing really to see here. They've been using it for years and years and years. Back in 2001, this was a relatively new way of putting a shifter into a car, this sort of jigsaw, reverses orange, neutrals green sort of thing. But now they're still using this shifter here in 2021, so I'm pretty used to it at this point. But again, it was new back then. Then to the right of that, I have a little openable cubby with a 12-volt outlet. So the LS430 has some fun little hidden away cup holders that fold out right here. Slow-mo for dramatic effect. Let's see. Big friggin' bottle test. The 430 passes the big friggin' bottle test, baby. Look at that. Solid as... well, okay, it's not super solid, but it fits and it holds the big friggin' bottle, so the LS430 gets a pass. And then we get the center console. The center console does have a decent amount of storage space. Now, the seats are really comfortable. They are power, they are memory, they are cooled, and they are heated, which is fantastic. I love them. Very, very comfortable. The Ultra Luxury did get a nicer form of leather here in the interior, which is really nice. It's held up really well in the last 20 years and 105,000 miles, which I love. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, and this is where things get interesting. So let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2001 Lexus LS430, and there's so much to go through back here. Let's start off with the not so important parts. I do have memory seats back here because the seats are reclining, which is very, very interesting and something you don't usually get in vehicles like this, reclining rear seats. I have a little ashtray on the door, auto one-touch down windows, which is very nice, and I do get these nice sunshades, as well as back here, this little corner window gets its own little sunshade. Now moving into the center, a couple interesting things. I can raise and lower my headrest, which is really, really nice, up and down like that. But then I have massaging features. You could probably tell by my voice. Basically it just vibrates you. It's not like a new Mercedes where it's like, you know, percussive air sacs filling, closing, filling, closing. So this is a lot more jittery, and only the back seats get this. The front seats do not have a massage feature. I have the radio controls back here, as well as the climate controls, 2 cup holders, and of course heated seats, and I can raise and lower the rear sunshade from back here. But the last party piece of the back seat is back here behind me. There's a little refrigerator. That's right, in the back of the LS430 Ultra Luxury, it has a refrigerator. Now it's run off the AC. It basically just pumps this little box full of AC, keeps your drinks cool. It doesn't like freeze them or anything. It's not the craziest thing in the world, but the fact that it even has it is really, really cool to me. I've only driven a handful of vehicles with refrigerators on board, and the LS430 is now one of them. So something funny I just noticed, hold on here. So you can change the speed of the massaging seats, and you can like rev them up almost. So I'm gonna put the microphone on the seat. Listen for yourself. You could slow it down to where it almost sounds like it's gonna stall, which is great. It's so funny. Let's take a quick look at the trunk. All right, so we're on the back of the 2001 Lexus LS430. Look at how much you can fit in here. The trunk is absolutely massive. Absolutely massive. So huge. That's true on all Lexus LS products, but man, have a nice little pull tab here. Very, very nice. One thing about the interior that I want to touch on before we get to the exterior is the noise inside the car. Lexus went to great lengths in order to cut down on the noise. First of all, and most notably, the windows, they have this thick sort of rubber padding up at the top. So when the window is up, it creates a nice solid seal. When the air conditioning is off inside of this car, the loudest noise you will hear is your own stomach digesting your lunch. That's how nice and quiet the interior is. And again, I'm gonna keep saying it, this car has 105,000 miles and is 20 years old. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and the looks are very understated. I like the sort of stealth wealth approach because this is a very highly equipped car. This car almost has James Bond level gadgets inside of it, and yet it won't stir the crowd. It's not going to attract a lot of attention like James Bond should. It just looks like a blobby Toyota Avalon, and yet it is so far from that. I love that. But now, let's talk about the LS430 as a whole. What do I think about this car? Well, in all honesty, I think this is one of the best purchases you can make. And hear me out on this. First of all, this car is 105,000 miles. Yes, but it is barely broken in. The engine is going to run forever. Do your timing belt, it'll run forever. Paul got this car for not that much money, and yet it has features that even my brand new Mazda 3 that I just bought last year, fresh off the showroom, doesn't have. This car has radar cruise control, which my Mazda does as well, but it's 20 years later. My car is 20 years late to that game. I mean, I have reclining, massaging back seats with a refrigerator in the middle. I have little side blinds. I have oscillating climate control vents. I have real wood inside the car. I have memory seats. This car was modern 20 years ago, which is just so crazy to think about. You know, I obviously have an RX-7, and I've owned many RX-7s. And people always say that the third generation Mazda RX-7 is timeless. It's a timeless design. And I think those people are weirdos. Because when I look at an RX-7, I obviously know it's from the 90s. I can clearly tell with its pop-up headlights and its little weird door handles and its just weird engine and shape. I can tell, I know that that car is from the 90s. If that car were made today, it would be very weird. But I do believe the 430 is timeless. If this car rolled out of the showroom today, I don't think many people would bat an eye. And that's because it is so subtle, so calm and collected. It doesn't make any brash statements. It doesn't have to. It's not trying to impress anyone. It's in its own world. It stays in its own lane. And that's what I love about this car. It's understated and yet powerful, reliable, luxurious. This is one of the best cars you can purchase, I think, on the used market for sure. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Paul for letting me take out his newly acquired LS430. Paul has been absolutely awesome. I've reviewed a half dozen vehicles from him at this point, and he's always been a great supporter of the channel. And it's super fun to, of course, geek out with him whenever he gets a new car. And I think this might be one of his best purchases, especially for the price that he got this car for. Not much else makes sense. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.